Good morning. Today I'll be shedding a light on suicide and the severity that it has. So first, I'll start off by defining what suicide ideation is. And suicide ideation, or it's also known as suicidal thoughts that occur within a person. So it's a preoccupied concern with suicide. So this can include extensive thoughts, which like where you think about committing suicide and taking your own life. Um, Detailed planning, so you plan on how you're going to commit suicide, and attempts. Those are all things that correlate with suicide ideation. And see, you could see the person. She's having these suicidal thoughts because of some sort of distress in her life, or something that has impacted her in a negative way. So the history of suicide. So I'll be talking about history of suicide in America, and it's important to say that it's America only for now. So suicide wasn't really that prevalent before 1929. It was more. It was seen, but it wasn't at take. It wasn't as serious. Suicide became evident in 1929 when the stock market crashed, and which was one of the reasons for the Great Depression. So it was economic distress that caused people to commit suicide in the first place, and that's where we really saw a spike in suicide rates. Other factors that contribute to high suicide rates is wartime. Well, actually, the time after wartime, which is post World War II, or Vietnam, or even the Iraq War, and Afghanistan. So people have come back with like PTSD, which is post traumatic stress disorder, and they just don't feel a sense of connection with society anymore. And therefore they choose to take that route. So when suicide started to spike in 1929 and other things, they always decreased and they went back to a stable level. But eventually, like now in recent years, which is like the past 30 years, there has been a trend where it hasn't decreased, and instead it's just been skyrocketing because of certain factors, which I'll get into right now. And see here that, well, it's kind of blurry, but America from 1960 has just kept on growing, and it doesn't show any signs of stopping. So I feel like it's really important to understand Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So Maslow was a psychologist, and his hierarchy of needs is a theory in psychology that he proposed. So it is a pyramid. So like any pyramid needs a strong foundation. So we have physiological, and physiological is the basic needs of any human being. So any metabolic needs such as air, water, food, clothing, anything that relates to that sort. So the basic human need to survive. Then after that, it's safety. So the feeling of safety relates to like being able to feel comfort in your environment. So that could also relate to financial security, personal security, and the health and well-being of yourself. And once you get these two, you keep going up on the pyramid. So that's what Maslow was really arguing, that you keep getting these, you get one of them, and you keep moving up on the pyramid. So next is the love and belonging, which is really where it starts tying in with suicide and the feeling of belongingness. So if one isn't given the feeling of love and belonging, then it becomes really hard to form and maintain relationships. So that could be intimate relationships, family relationships, or even friendships. So, and it's been proven that humans need some form of interaction with human beings, and if they don't have that, then it could lead to clinical depression or loneliness, which is one of the causes of suicide. So then after that, it goes on to esteem. So that's respect for yourself, and and being accepted and valued by others. So once you get the esteem, it becomes really easy to get to the self-actualization. And the self-actualization is your full potential. So once you get all these, you really are able to do all you can do with your self-actualization. So you realize that you have the ability to prosper. And what Maslow was arguing was not that if you don't have one of these, you're never gonna achieve anything. He's just saying that it's going to be really difficult. So if you go on in the path, then it'll be simple. But if you don't, it'll just become harder. And so the pyramid really correlates with the causes of suicide. So we can go on for days for why someone commits suicide. But here are some of the more prevalent reasons. So serious depression. So the serious depression relates to the feeling of love and belonging, because if one doesn't feel as if though they can tie in with society or with anyone, then they really do become depressed. The feeling of loss, which is also safety, which is that they don't feel comfortable in their environment because of some tragic loss, which is could be a family member or like an opportunity that they lost. Unhappy with environment, it also relates to safety. Stress, which is safety as well because of the well-being of yourself, so that also relates. And then bullying also relates to esteem and the feeling of love and belonging, because if you're bullied, you really don't have that self-respect for yourself, and you don't feel connected to anyone because of the fact that you're being bullied. So the no sense of belonging obviously correlates with this one. And then chronic pain can relate to physiological and safety. So you don't feel you're not safe. So the effects of committing and attempting suicide. So the person that attempts and actually does commit suicide is not the only one that is being affected. Other people are affected, like the community, their family and friends, and so all their relationships with these are really jeopardized. So I read a book. It was called *The Virgin Suicides* by Jeffrey Eugenides, and in the book, it started off with a girl. She tried to commit suicide by jumping off her house, and she was saved and she survived. But the aftermath of her attempt really correlated with her family. Her family started to deteriorate. Her community started to separate because of her, and even her sisters. She had like 5 sisters, and all of them became distant from each other. And at the end, they all ended up committing suicide. And it just really goes to show that the person that first attempts it really does have an effect on themselves and on the people that they surround themselves with. So I decided to juxtapose Asia's suicide ideation with the one that we have here. So in Asia, it's different. It's way different than what we have here, because we could talk about the samurais and the kamikazes and the way that they chose to deal with suicide. So we have here an image of a kid. He committed suicide, and it says failure means death, because he has failed and he feels as if though his only hope is to commit suicide. And so these things tie back with history and the culture that Asia has really created around suicide. So they desensitize death and suicide altogether. And it really goes to show that like Asia just doesn't really take suicide as severe as we do. So I decided to, I read an article, and it said it was about a study, and then they analyzed high school students and the reasons, high school students in Asia, so like Thailand, Vietnam, Korea, China, all those countries. So they talked to the students, and they got data on them, and it said that 25% of them had formulated some sort of suicide idea at one point or another. So they all decided that they were going to commit suicide, but the reasons were different. So it was stress, levels of unhappiness, but the thing is that they fantasized over suicide. They didn't take it as severe as we do. And even here, we see a trend that Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore, Thailand, they're all increasing in suicide because of the fact that they don't take suicide as severely as we do, which is tragic. So what can be done? So parts of Asia, they're at the point of no return because of the fact that they have desensitized it so much that they don't take it as severely as we do. So the reason I chose to juxtapose Asia with America was because I wanted to show that this is how severe it can get, and we need to do something before we get there. We don't want our students or our community to feel as if though suicide is a way of escape or it's something as simple as that. So my solution was that we need to stop desensitizing because we need to take it as severely as it is. Suicide is a tragic and horrendous thing that we must take seriously. So another thing was try to be aware of those that surround yourself. We need to as a community, we need to relate to each other and be there for each other. So early detection, by that I mean just look out for those who are next to you, and if they show any signs, which could be just sadness, depression, all those things, just really talk to them or something like that. And I mean, it all ties down to you guys because there's no one way to solve this. It's just only up to you guys to really just sense it before it becomes too late. Thank you.